The flashing lights, the rush of adrenaline, the feeling of winning it big. Gambling is incredible, only it's not. I think at this point, there's virtually no one who can legally gamble that doesn't know that gambling is set up to trigger specific reactions in your brain to keep you playing. While no one is truly fooled by the allure of winning it big, people lose their houses, their life savings, and their families each and every year to the slots. It's easy to forget, but while each dollar that the movie market makes is from a moviegoer spending money on a product, every dollar the gambling market makes is a dollar that someone lost. And gambling is $1 billion market, more lucrative than either movies or video games. It's never big enough though, and gambling needs to grow. When it's time for a market to transcend its initial medium, it will. From the streets of Las Vegas to the streams of Twitch, people playing in online casinos and more. It's not a surprise that the gambling market is trying to reach its hands into the virtual world. I mean, it's already gotten its hooks into gaming, right? Wrong. One of the biggest issues we face today with gambling is the widespread misconception that gambling has been infecting one of our favorite mediums, video games. When I was talking up gambling in the beginning of the video, I wasn't just setting it up to drop it. Maybe you have experience with it and maybe you don't, but gambling is addictive for a reason. Many studies have been done into the effects of gambling, from the rates of self-inflicted fatalities to the studies of brain chemistry that occurs when pulling a slot lever. The jury is out. And in its entirety, gambling is a predatory industry. Even so, except for those who absolutely refuse to partake, we still love to do it anyways. If you think you've never gambled, let's test that out. Let's see if you've done any of these things. The first and most obvious example are slots and roulette. You have virtually no effect on the outcome, and given enough time, you will lose everything, no matter how much you win. I don't think anyone who has played these games thinks they haven't gambled though. So next is playing either poker, blackjack, Texas Hold'em, Red Dog, or any other card game for stakes. Have you ever bought a lottery ticket? If you think that is any less like gambling than poker and slots, take into consideration that you have less of a chance of winning the lottery than you have at getting the same money from either of those practices. Maybe you made a bet with a friend when you were a kid. What about scratch tickets? Participate in any bets for money? What about without money? If you said no to all of these, I'm 99% sure you're lying. Whether you are or not doesn't matter. Because if you want to be loose with the term, anything high risk can loosely be considered gambling. However, I will talk about using this term loosely later. It's important to talk about the real thing now, though, before we dive into its side effects, because when comparing other things to gambling, we often forget what it actually is. So first, let's just define it. Gambling is defined in U.S. Code Title 31, Subtitle 4, Chapter 53, Subchapter 4, Section 5362. A bet or wager means the stake or risking by any person of something of value upon the outcome of a contest of others, a sporting event, or a game subject to chance, upon an agreement or understanding that the person or another person will receive something of value in the event of a certain outcome. Or, in shorthand, gambling is when you risk money to potentially gain money based on chance. For the most part, people know that. So what can I say about gambling that we don't already know? Well, if you wanted to go gambling, could you? Is it even legal? Yes. No. And it depends. Ambiguity. Excellent. Most people likely think gambling is legal everywhere, but it's actually not. Even in my home country, while gambling isn't illegal throughout the entire country, it is illegal in certain areas of the country. So if you live in Hawaii or Utah, I'm sorry to say you can't gamble, period. But if you live in Michigan, you can literally do any and all kinds of gambling as long as you're above the legal age, which is either 18 or 21 or never in most places in the US. Over the sea, though, in England, gambling is completely legal. Woo! So you can go hit the slots, play some poker, or bet on some cricket, alright? And there are virtually no laws to stop underage people from gambling. Yes. So if you're heavily addicted and you can't get your fix in the States, head on down to jolly old England and gamble your heart away. The law for minors, as stated in the Gambling Act of 2005, Section 48, says that while minors aren't allowed to enter the premises of multiple gambling sections, there are quite a few exceptions to how they can still gamble.
Well, at least we don't have to have school shoot every third pancake day of the month.
Yes, at least there's that. Gambling has different levels of litigation depending on where you go. Many Islamic countries have banned all gambling, as well as other non Islamic countries like Japan before 2016. With varying levels of regulations all across the globe, it's clear that gambling is everywhere. While other forms of entertainment like video games and movies have trouble penetrating foreign markets, there is no language barrier when it comes to making the dream come true of hitting the jackpot, or falling into a crippling pit of debt that you can never crawl out of. However, with so many restrictions, how big can the gambling market actually be? Well, back in 2020, gambling was clocked as being a $227 billion industry worldwide. That's a lot of fucking money. Video games, for comparison, only come in at $173 billion, and the movie industry made $220 billion. To put it into perspective, today Elon's net worth is $230 billion, which gambling 2 years ago was only 3 million shy of. Back in 2020, when the survey was taken, his net worth was 159 billion. So if you're curious what the gambling market might be like today, it would be closer to 330 billion than 230 billion. So, as far as entertainment goes, even though it appeals to a significantly smaller population of people than video games or movies, it's obviously the largest entertainment market of the world. The only global market that really beat it out are sectors like software. With all that money, gambling isn't going anywhere anytime soon. It's going to keep growing and will feel its influence reaching farther and farther. Since it's one of the best ways to separate a customer from their money, which is why, even though it has heavy regulations, it has finally been able to reach out to other markets like Twitch and video games. Gambling mechanics of video games are not new. Online gambling isn't new. Video poker, while not normally considered a video game, has been around since 1970, only 12 years after the first video game was created. Since then, many different things tailored after being gambling like mechanics have been implemented into video games, and we'll take a look at those a little later. However, there is something new that has been heavily affecting the gambling scene recently. Recently, there has been a big controversy with XQC coming back to gambling after publicly apologizing for it before. For those of you who don't know, XQC is one of the largest streamers on Twitch, who can get 100,000 concurrent viewers to watch him. Several months ago, he accepted sponsorship for a gambling website on his channel with a less than ideal partner, and then apologized for the entire situation. His return to the scene has led many to call him a hypocrite, but XQC has publicly stated that these accusations are trash. He has stated several times since the initial incident that his opinion on the matter has changed.
Would you have as much fun gambling if you were doing it off stream than on stream?
Yeah, I gamble every day. I lost 2 mil this month.
Really?
I lost 1.85 mil this month.
I don't want to linger here too long, but I will say he's right. People's minds change. He admitted he was wrong to apologize, and whether you agree or disagree, doing gambling streams now does not make him a hypocrite, because his current ideals and actions align. I'd like to talk about instead the discussion around his return. I've seen several commentators talk about the topic and say they ultimately do not blame him. He's making his money, and as long as it's allowed to be on Twitch, who cares? Instead, they blame Twitch, saying it's their responsibility to dictate what is and is not allowed on their platform.
It's a problem. But I don't think the onus of whether you gamble or do not gamble should ever be on the streamer. I have a theory where I just feel like we shouldn't rely on humans to have the morality that we are looking for. They should not be the ethical person. It should be the platform. The platform is the one that should dictate what is okay and not okay, rather than hoping that thousands and thousands of people will all abide by loose guidelines that we all think people should abide by.
I disagree with this statement. I don't blame the soapbox that someone stands on when they shout something uncouth into the streets. I think XQC is ultimately going to do what he thinks is best for him, and so will his fans. If people think that what he's doing is wrong, then they should hold him accountable. In the end, they know that demanding the streamer to do something about his actions means that they must take responsibility for their own similar actions. And that's difficult. Don't hate the player, hate the game. It's a term I hear thrown out a lot, but I feel like the statement is becoming more and more outdated. It's like the statement, bros before hoes. Everyone knows you put your girl before your boys. But people say that because they want their friend to hang out with them when they're single. The same goes for don't hate the player. It's a phrase used by players who immediately change the rules of the game given the chance. Esmongold himself mentions he would skip taking sponsorships entirely and go straight to creating an online gambling website.
Here.
So, that's where we're at, guys. So, guys, we're not gonna deal with any of this broke shit. Taking a gambling sponsorship. If I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do it the same way as I did everything else. I'll do it myself.
But he doesn't, because that would be a much shittier life than what he has, and no matter how much he likes to act like a slumlord, he's got a lot of integrity, whether he admits it or not. While I agree with him from time to time, he also says it's Twitch's responsibility to monitor this. The problem with this is that in the same video, he talks about how even if Twitch did regulate it, he knows the people doing this would find a way around it. So what even is the point? For better or worse, I don't know what the best course of action is in scenarios like this, but in a short while, I will talk about where it's heading. While XQC is the most recent controversy, it's far from the biggest, or most well known. The biggest one in recent memory is the CSGO skin gambling scene. There were several different scandals surrounding the scene a few years ago, the first of which is centered around Trevin Martin and Tom Cassell. They hosted a CSGO skin gambling site that they promoted as a sponsor without disclosing that they were the owners of it. This was followed by the complimentary half-assed apology videos and several class action lawsuits. But that wasn't the only one. Even back then, Twitch streamers were a part of gambling controversies. A previously pro streamer, Mohammed Assad, was sponsored by CSGO Diamond, and in his stream had received results of games before they had happened, so he could rig the game in his favor for more entertaining viewing. On top of that, he was playing with funds supplied by the sponsor, so the entire experience was fabricated, but acted out as a real experience. This is actually a really substantial issue for a few reasons. While you may not participate in streaming culture, it has an important real-life aspect to it, like reality TV before it. Streams are done in such a way that it leads viewers to believe that streamers are, well, real people. Reality TV is known to be heavily edited. It's to the point where the participants on the show are rarely anything like what you will see of them on the show. In the beginning, people didn't know that and believed what they saw was real people, and even a little bit today, I'm sorry to say. Streamers offer a better alternative to this, because their streams are generally a very real snapshot of their life. Even if they are acting, when they are streaming more than half of their life every day, the line between who they are gets real fuzzy. This leaves viewers with a much bigger assurance that what they see is at least somewhat real, so you tend to believe what you see. There is a tendency now for calculated controversies to help improve your reach, but these are generally an outlier. The way this relates to the Assad issue is that when you're watching television and an ad comes on, you know you're being sold an over-the-top version of the product. Sure, they act like they're able to stomach a can of Pepsi without vomiting blood onto the floor, but I know the truth. I don't believe for a second that actor believes what they're saying. A recommendation from a friend is a very different thing, though. If your friend tells you they like something, you generally at least believe they like it. So maybe you'll give it a try. Streamers aren't our friends, but they are also not paid actors on TV. When you go to a streamer and see them playing a game, you believe the game they're playing is legitimate. So when Assad completely rigged the gambling stream to make the ad more compelling, his viewers' trust was eviscerated when they found out he lied. A parallel I want to draw is smoking. At one point, there were ads everywhere. In every movie, every billboard, every cartoon. If you lived back then, your parents did it, your friends did it, and eventually you would do it. The world has changed, and you can't even get a fun cereal commercial because of it. The world evolves, though, and players will find different ways to play the game. Now they have streamers they can sponsor. Imagine if your favorite dirtbag started washing his hands because he was sponsored by a soap. They never paid him to advertise, so he doesn't have to disclose the product on stream. But they pay him $10,000 to wash his hands when he goes to the bathroom. Would that work? Well, it depends on the streamer, really.
Like your hands are clean? Look how clean my hands are. There's no dirt on my hands. Don't worry about it at all. Lick your hand to prove it.
Imagine if the purest streamer you knew was made to be a co-owner of a frozen burrito company, and then they ate it on their streams, not as part of an ad, but as a great snack. If that's weird, they wear their merch all the time, and they don't have to point out their merchandise. At least we know Amaranth will always be single. In all seriousness, it's the nature of streaming that really lends itself to the gambling scene. Most people hear a story of someone at some point hitting it big. However, virtually no one really hits the jackpot. But there's always a story about it in the news. Imagine if XQC won the lottery on stream, and I mean 100% legitimately. 100,000 people would see that in real time and see him win $100 million. Those 100,000 people will now be a part of that winning of the lottery. More people than the lottery could ever dream of would hear about it, and that clip would get shared worldwide, and bam! The story goes from someone somewhere won the lottery to I actually saw someone win the lottery. How many sales does the lottery get that year? Heck, that day. How many lifetime lottery players would it make? The lottery would instantaneously become significantly more profitable. That would lead to many people believing it was actually rigged. And if it was, that would likely be a death sentence to the lottery. While the lottery would run into a lot of trouble doing this, online gamblings can replicate this success without the massive lawsuits and pesky issues like lifetime imprisonment in federal prison. That's not to say anyone playing gambling streams is using fake funds in their streams without disclosing them. But even if there were huge fines and litigations against the streamer and the gambling website, unlike the lottery, there's countless online casinos to choose from. So it wouldn't even matter if they got caught, because the rest of the market would reap the spoils of their fall. But how did we get here? How did we get to the point where some people care so deeply and most people just can't be bothered? In the beginning, there was nothing. No hot anime waifus, no 5-star polls, no honing success chance, no loot boxes, no battle passes, no DLCs, no day one updates, no buster blades, no power-up mushrooms, nothing. There was absolutely nothing. In fact, we don't actually know what was in the beginning. And I don't really care. But what I do care about is what happened after the beginning. The first known human life, from the very start of humans, have always been trying to make life better. And from the moment of the first improvement, every step that helped make life better was followed by other people wishing things would just stay the same. It's all these books' fault that the world is on its heels. If only we could ban them and go back to when we worked with our hands. Oh, this damn rock and roll music. It's causing our children to rebel. Let's ban it and have them listen to the classics. Video games are making the next generation lazy. Why can't you just read a book? This dubstep sounds like just noise. Let's ban it and listen to some good old-fashioned classic rock and roll. How can you watch someone play games? That's so lazy. Why don't you just play them yourself? You're watching someone react to someone reacting? What's the world coming to? Needless to say, people don't like change. I'm not here to argue whether that's good or bad. I'm just pointing it out. It's no different anywhere you go, and that includes inside video game culture. There's usually a push of excitement for a new change, such as 3D isometric graphics, VR, handheld, and the slew of remakes, just as a few examples. These are all received with different levels of excitement. Then backlash, leading into acceptance, only to fade into irrelevance, to eventually get brought back to life with a sense of nostalgia or new ingenuity to revitalize the idea. Virtually every new thing goes through this process. Gambling mechanics are no exception. The reason why gambling has become such a non-issue for so many has to do with the second step, backlash. We as humans have a strong sense of danger when it comes to identifying an outsider, but our experience with this will be influenced by our experience with a subject. For example, when brought face to face with a real-life bear, a bear hunter could feel no danger, Or I guess, maybe like a Russian. A child, however, could feel the most intense sense of fear they have ever experienced in their short life simply by seeing a man in a bear costume at a theme park. That doesn't mean the man should be feared, but the child has very limited understanding of what they're seeing, and they know they should be afraid of bears, so hence their reaction. The thing is, the child is going to give a visceral reaction to the sight of the mascot and perceive any of its motions as a threat on the child's life. This reaction could result in the panic of other children and potentially even adults in the vicinity. They don't really know much about the man in the bear costume anyways, but the child is almost identical to them, so they all start to panic. The thing is, most parents know that it's a man in the bear costume, so they aren't going to do anything about it. And that's why XQC can now gamble so easily. If you're not following me, that's okay, I skipped a few steps. Elements like gacha, loot boxes, honing, and more have been lambasted as gambling in the past. And by some people, they still are today. The issue is that these are not gambling. I explained what gambling was earlier. People use the definition and try to stretch it every which way, saying everything that has to do with using money and getting things based on chance is gambling, but it's not. Just to show you a quick example, buying a pack of Pokemon cards isn't gambling. It has random chance elements, and you have opportunities to come out with more value than you put in. But the value of the item you leave with are judged differently around the world. The first edition Shadowless Charizard is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars to the right person, but not to me. Sure, if I got one, I'd be pretty happy about it and try and sell it to someone. But you know what is worth $100,000 to everyone? $100,000. If I went to Vegas and I won $100,000, that money would be spent anywhere. I doubt I could get a tenth of the Charizard's worth if I won that, though. While this might be confusing, what I'm trying to point out is the difference between gambling and other things that aren't gambling. I'm doing this because the more you understand why the man in the bear costume isn't a bear, the more you understand why the only person who should not be scared of a face-to-face encounter with a real bear is a Russian. Or a bear hunter, I guess. There's just less of those. There have been children in the theme park for years calling gacha gambling, calling loot boxes gambling. People have started doubling and tripling down and call Pokemon cards gambling. The problem is, the rest of the kids in the theme park just don't care anymore. Someone starts screaming about the man in the bear costume and everyone ignores it, even if it turns out to be an actual bear. The only winner in The Boy Who Cried Wolf was the wolf. The villagers always answered the call at first, because they are scared of a wolf coming along. The boy didn't want to be eaten by a wolf, but still called a wolf out for fun anyways. The boy kept calling wolf over and over again, not understanding what the villagers' indifference would mean in the case of an actual wolf. Well, the wolf has arrived, and no one cares anymore. Earlier, I talked about influencers who are now gambling in front of their audience, and I said I know where it's heading. It's heading towards litigation. The gaming industry is plagued with misunderstandings. People who don't know a thing about video games are the ones who are going to step in soon. People who hated it when they were told their things were evil, but see no irony in blaming video games for those same evils. If you think the laws will help stop gambling, it won't. It'll just destroy good games while gambling finds another way. When the laws eventually come in, they'll be meant to stop bears, but they'll stop men in bear suits. Because bears will always find a way. Things no sane person has ever thought was gambling could be seen as illegal. Things like RNG are going to be under heavy scrutiny. Will these bills pass? Who knows? Should they? I honestly don't know. Is there a silver lining? Maybe games will be less scummy for a little while, but otherwise, not really. I want to talk about something that really no one talks about when they talk about gambling, though. I want to talk about gamblers. Games with these elements have always been supported by whales. However, that's usually all they are supported by. An admittedly old survey done in 2014 checked how much people paid money in freemium games. Only about 1.5% of those surveyed admitted to paying money, and of that percent, only the top 10%, or in other words, just 0.15% of the people surveyed paid 53% of the total amount of money the game received. These are the whales. What does that mean for you? That means you are likely know which one of these three groups you are. Are you the 0.15%, the 1.35%, or the 98.5%? If you are in that bottom 99.85%, there is nothing to fear from these games except terrible quality progression. You are in no danger of these pulling you in, so if you can, try and act like it. The man in the bear suit is just a man in the bear suit. Don't act like he's a bear. Influencers want places like Twitch to step in, and so do many of the 99.85%. But it's not their job. Out of the 100,000 people watching XQC stream, only 150 of them might gamble seriously. But there's something you need to remember. They're likely to want to do that whether or not they see him doing it. So why not, instead of trying to ban something the 100,000 people love to watch, use this as an opportunity to explain the help. Hey, 0.15%. If you're still watching, thanks. Most of you enjoy being whales. It's fun, and it kind of ticks you off when people keep trying to protect you. Sorry about that. For the ones who legitimately have a problem, I'm sorry to say, but it's your responsibility to work through these problems. If you're struggling, needing to get a fix, consider going to one of the websites linked below. They can get you the help you need.
Yes, exactly. That's right. This is just some... Guys, this is... I don't know if I've ever been lower than this point, like, before. And the worst part about it, like, this is the worst part about being this low, is that I know that it's gonna get worse.
Try not to watch the content that generates your itch. And for the rest of you, keep calling out what you hate. Keep applauding what you love. And for the love of God, leave the man in the bear suit alone. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.